Hello pumpkins! So in today's video I have my July wrap-up. So these are all the books that I've read in July. So before I get into this, since I've never done a July wrap-up before on either these videos that I'm posting now or the videos I've posted back when, I'll just tell you basically kind of like how I'm going to do this. So I do read a lot of Wattpad books and actual books. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the Wattpad books that I read, and I'm also going to be then I'm going to be talking about all the book versions or books that I've read. If that makes any sense. And also I'm going to rate them. So I have a 4-star rating system, which I'll also write in the description. And all the Wattpad books I'm going to be talking about will be linked in the description in case anybody wants to read them. So my 4-star rating system, 1 star out of 4 is I hated the book. 2 is the book was alright. It was okay. 3 is I really liked the book. And then 4 is I love the book so much. So that's basically the rating system that I have. And then also here's like what I'm going to do for all of them. So I'm going to like tell how many stars I rated it based on the rating system that I have. And then I'm going to talk about the summary without spoilers. What I loved about the book and what I hated about the book without risk of spoilers. So without further ado, let us get into this. So for the Wattpad books, I read 3 of them. So the first one looks like this, and it's called Christmas Kisses. Again, I'll be linking it down below. And I gave it a 2 out of 4 stars, which means it was alright. The summary that I wrote down is a one-night stand that leads to pregnancy, and during Christmas time, the girl has to tell the boy he's the father while they are all snowed in a house. So it's a interesting concept, and what I loved about the Christmas Kisses is that it was a good story idea, but I really hated the way the character's personality was written. Like all of them, the guy and the girl, they were very two-faced, and they made it was just poor decisions, and they were very two-faced, basically. And I hated in this story how the author wrote very much male dominance. Like, every description of the guy was, like, how muscular and strong he was. And, like, we don't need that reminder. Like, every time he was introduced, like, he came into the story, the girl was, like, in his strong, muscular body. And he had strong calves, and he had strong arms, and all that. And it's just, like, really unnecessary. So yeah, I gave that book a 2 out of 4 stars, and I didn't put it on my reading list or anything, cause it's pointless. I mean, it's a good Christmas read, it's just a little bit strange. So the second book that I read, that's Wattpad, is called Dear Sidney. Oh, I should tell you who it's by, or the vampire, or not, Christmas Kisses was by Vampire Bunny 2154. I mean, I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, because if you want to read it, it'll be in the description. But I'll just tell you. So, Dear Sidney is by Catherine Powell, and it looks like this, if it'll focus. Kind of. You get the gist. Okay. And I rated this one I say 2 out of 4 stars, but I think I liked it a little bit more. So I'd say I liked it. So 3 out of 4 stars, even though I wrote 2 out of 4 stars. The summary of this book is about pen pals that are in high school who live like 3,000 miles away, and they both had their hearts broken by past relationships, but they find love in each other. Um, and I really liked the writing style, especially like all the, like, it wasn't like, most of it wasn't written in like normal writing style. It was written in letters and like Facebook posts and like tweets and text message, and it was really interesting, and I liked the writing style in it. I also really liked the characters, mainly the villains in the story, and I thought they were like very interesting and intriguing. What I hated about the book was uh the sudden plot twist. It just basically to end it. Um, that's what it felt like reading it. So there was a plot twist, which I'm not gonna spoil it. Um, and it felt like it was just so sudden that it felt like the author didn't really know how to end the story, so they just wrote that. Um, I also didn't like how on Wattpad there was no last chapter. Um, although you were warned in the very beginning about how there is a missing chapter, I felt kind of like a little bit lost on what happened. But it did help when the author wrote like 9 epilogues. Um, so you kind of get what happens, but you never really truly finish it. But yeah, I did like the book. I'm not going, or the Wattpad book, I'm not going to put it on a reading list either, so. The third and last Wattpad book that I read was called Opa's Poems, and it's by Christian Tracks. And it looks like this, kind of. Sorry if you can't see, this is like really, I just want to show you. um, it doesn't have, like, it's not really that well known. It only has like, just over 100 reads. But anyways, I rated this, 3 out of 4 stars. I did like it. The summary is basically, it's nonfiction, kind of like, it's basically like someone's grandpa, like in real life, actually wrote these poems, and they're mainly about like God and stuff, and like political takes. And I did like the poetry. I liked the poems, and I thought they were pretty good. Some of them I didn't like. What I hated about them was like some of the political views, which, I mean, I shouldn't hate it because of that, but like some of the poems are very political, and like I didn't agree with it. Mainly like there's a poem about abortion versus like um not having an abortion, so pro-choice versus pro-life, and the guy was very pro-life. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I liked it either way though. So, I gave it a 3 out of 4 stars. I don't know if I'd put it in a reading list. Um, I don't think I did, or I would, even after filming this. So, yeah, so that's all the Wattpad books I wrote, or not wrote, that I read. Um, and like I said, they're going to be linked in the description, so you don't have to search for it. Anyways, so all the books I read, I have 8 books I read. And so, sorry, I got distracted. So, the first book that I read is called Spirits Out of Time by Annie Wilder. And I didn't read this book in July, technically. I read it in June. but I decided to put it in my July wrap up. I rated it a 2 out of 4 stars, and like I thought it was alright. The summary is that it's like the author's family's ghost stories and experiences in like the astral realm, which is pretty cool. What I mainly picked up this book for was all the ghostly encounters and stuff, and that's what I mainly loved about this book, but I also loved how there was a lot of Irish traditions in it, and I thought that was pretty cool. Um, what I hated about this book was like the astral um, realm, the astral stuff. I find it very uninteresting, and I just don't really find it very interesting about the astral realm and stuff. Um, but if that's something you'd like, then you could most definitely read it, or probably could read it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm very distracted. Anyway, I also hated the bad editing. Like, for example, on page 32, I wrote, like, the O is missing in community. So, like, just kind of typos and stuff. Like, I don't know if you can see, because my, yeah, you can't see that, but my, computer's kind of, the video quality isn't up to date. But, anyways, yeah, I thought this book was alright. I did really like the ghostly encounters and stuff, and also the Irish traditions, like I said. And I also, when I'm reviewing books particularly, I'm going to be telling you guys if I'm going to keep it or if I'm going to give it up to like Goodwill or something. And this book I'm going to give up to Goodwill. I wouldn't read it again, so yeah. Hopefully someone would like this book. But I didn't really like it and I wouldn't read it again. The second book that I read uh, was called The Autumn Balloon, and it's by Kenny Porpora. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. I really liked this book, so I gave it a 3 out of 4 stars. I love memoirs, particularly life stories about hardships and stuff. So basically, the summary of this book is the author's life and him dealing with like hard life and loss and addiction. So what I loved about this book was it had really good writing in it, and it was very relatable to me. And it was an enjoyable read and very understandable, um, like understandable for the parts that are in here. I don't know. What I hated about this book was that, like, even though it says the autumn balloon, and in the very beginning, like in the prologue or something, it talked about like how his mom had this, or in him had this tradition of like writing down a family member who passed on's like name onto a balloon and like letting it go uh in memory of them, but that was only mentioned like once, even though it was like a tradition of theirs. So yeah. And there was also some confusing time jumps in here. Like, yeah, like particularly like it was kind of like hard to tell like where he was at in time because he didn't really say like an age or anything. Um and when he did, it was like one paragraph would be when he was aged like 10 or 11 and his brother was like 14, and then the next paragraph they're like in college already or something like that. Yeah. So um it was very confusing some parts, but I did overall really enjoy this book. So if I if you'd ask me if I would keep it or give it up to Goodwill, I'd say I'd keep it. And I would definitely recommend this book. So the next book that I read, let's see, is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. And so what I thought this book was okay. So I gave it a 2 out of 4 stars. The summary is that Martians basically invade Earth in the early 1920s. From what I can tell, it didn't give a time. I think it's 1890s or something, but I don't know how I could get those 2 decades decades confused, but oh well. What I loved about this book was it had a creative idea and the descriptions were very nice. But what I hated about this book was that it was very lengthy and parts were very descriptive, almost too descriptive and repetitive at times. So, although this book I thought was okay, and you should at least read it once, if you're really into the sci-fi genre. Although I thought about, I lost my train of thought. Although I thought this book was alright, I would have to say that I'd give it up to Goodwill because I wouldn't read it again. Another book that I read, I wrote sticky notes this whole time, is The Empty Glass by J.I. Baker. And this book I absolutely loved, so I gave it a 4 out of 4 stars. And the summary that I wrote down is that basically a deputy coroner investigates the strange death of Marilyn Monroe, which leads to uncovering a scandal. And it's very you know how Marilyn Monroe's death has conspiracy theories? This is basically that in book form. That's what I loved about the book. And I also loved the writing style and how it's very creative. What I hated about the book was that there was some confusing bits and there was also some time jumps, but it's not overall a horrible, you should never read this if you hate time jumps anyways. Yeah, but I definitely recommend this book, especially if you love mysteries and you are interested in the conspiracy theories surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death. Actually, fun fact, I read this in high school when I was a junior, and then I ended up uh, loving it so much that I bought it for my friend, and I still love it to this day, so yeah. And basically, this was a reread. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is actually 3 books in one, but it's 3 books. But since I bought it in this one big book, so it's just 3 books. And that is the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. So I'll just be talking about the Summer I Turned Pretty first book, and also a little bit of what I hated about and liked about the other 2, but I won't summarize it because it's a series. So I rated this book overall 3 out of 4 stars, so I really liked it. The summary is that basically 2 families have a tradition to go to this summer beach house every year, and this girl learns that she's pretty because guys act different around her. And she also is caught up in between a love triangle between 2 brothers. And that's basically what I love about it. If you can't tell, since I have my Twilight books back there, and Hunger Games, kind of, I absolutely love triangles. It's my favorite trope. I don't know why, I just love them. So that's what I loved about this book. I also love the summer vibes and how it's a good read for summertime. Um, and like I also love like sometimes like okay, hold on, sorry. So let me back up. So the second book, like I loved about it was that what I loved about it was I was more action based and less boring than the first book, although the first book is pretty good. And there's more, I love the way like emotion is shown through different characters in the second book, which is It's Not Summer Without You. What I liked about the third book, which is We'll Always Have Summer, is particularly this one character's point of view, because without his point of view, the reader doesn't really know that he is interested in the main character, which is Belly. Um, so I thought the point of views was very interesting. What I hated was that in this book, like the main character has very, like she's very like she has anger outbursts and like she sometimes can be a little bit two-faced. Like sometimes you think like, well, why are you mad about that? Like that's so dumb to be mad about. She also is very uh like I don't know. What did I she's also very self-conscious, which is kind of like irritating in a book. I don't really like when girls are like, she's pretty, but I'm not, like stuff like that. But other than that, I did really like the books or the series. I also what I also hated about this book, um, the last one, which skip a couple like click on the video like 2 times and I'll try to talk within 2 seconds because spoilers. So anyways, the I hate the last part because the author makes like the one of the love interests out to be like the bad guy so that the reader can root for the other love interest, which is two brothers. And it's just kind of like not the way his personality is, and it's just kind of irritating. Like, why would you change that just so the like readers can root for this one guy? Anyways, we'll wait a couple of minutes, not minutes, seconds. I don't remember what time I said to skip forward, but I'm assuming it's good. So, if you asked me if I was gonna give this up or keep it, I would have to say I'd give this copy up, which I'm gonna get a new copy of. That's the 3 separate books, because I hate the way this is printed, because it's in like, it's just 3 books, and it's like so big and like hard to handle, and like I'd rather have it be 3 separate books. That way I don't feel obligated to finish the whole entire series in one sitting because it's in one book form. You get what I'm saying though? I don't know. But I definitely recommend it. Oh yeah, the author is Jenny Han, by the way. The last book that I read this July is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Power of Persuasion by Elizabeth Massey. And it looks like this. And I'd have to give it a 1 out of 4 stars. I really didn't like this book. Basically the summary is that Buffy and her friends like have to deal with the new bad in Sunnydale High School, which is basically a Greek goddesses that are basically feminazis. I don't really like the term feminazi because it just kind of makes feminists like people, the way people perceive feminists as. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyways, I don't know. I didn't like this book very much. What I liked about it, though, is that it's basically a Buffy fan fiction in published form. And when I picked this up like years ago from the thrift store, for 99 cents, by the way, um, I've always loved Buffy, so I was really interested to read it. And I was like, wow, I was really into fan fiction back then, and I was like, oh my gosh, Buffy fan fiction? I'm totally getting it. And I picked up another or two other ones, but anyways, I don't know. What I hated was that the characters weren't really the characters. Like, they just did strange things that weren't really what the characters would do. Like, Buffy was very, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just really bad writing. I didn't like that how it read like basically a fan fiction, because it is a fan fiction. I didn't like that. There were some very cringy parts, and I mean, it'd never be as bad as my fan fiction, which I did read for you guys, and I'll probably link it down below if you're interested, but it's still pretty bad. So if you had to ask me if I would give it up to the Goodwill, I'd have to say yes, sadly. Even though I really love Buffy and I think it's cool that I have like Buffy themed books, I wouldn't read it again, and it's just kind of bad. So, not kind of bad, really bad. So, I wouldn't recommend either, unless you like are into that, like into like fan fiction published forms of that. Um, then go up for it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. And if this is turning into a 20-30 minute long video, so I'll see you guys later. Bye.